So Karen St. John,
Here.
Jackie Yenna,
Here.
Mary Morgan,
Here.
Paul Ash,
Here.
Alex Crowley,
Here.
Kate Rosenbarger.
Here.
And I think that's it for board members now. So I'll introduce myself, Jane Coopersmith, as staff, and then Brittany, can you say your name and your role? She's frozen. So Marnina, Patrick, Kevin Curran looks like he's logging in. Sean and Larry, could you identify yourselves?
John Starrett, City of Bloomington.
Larry Allen Beagle.
Sorry, there are still a few people coming. I think that's it for now. Who is 812-219-4074?
That's Kate.
Who
That's
is
Kate.
Yeah, that's Kate. That's me,
who
Kate.
is 708? Who is 708-253? That must be Kevin.
Yeah, that's me.
Okay, thanks.
Great. So why don't we move to approval of minutes? We have December and January. I don't know, folks had a chance to review those. Any comments, questions, edits, or motion to approve?
I had a couple of things to add if possible. In the December minutes, it talks about we increased the resident budget line.
Mary,
And-
can you tell what section you're in on the minutes, please?
Sure. It is in the December minutes,
Uh-huh.
and it is under draft budget presentation and approval.
Okay.
It says Paul Ash motioned for the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Scholarship to be renamed and moved to a different category, as well as increase the budget line for resident scholarship. At that point, did we know what the increase was? Just for clarity.
Of the resident scholarship line?
Yeah.
Yes, because we were doing a conversion from the same, I'm sorry, I have to look it up, but it was.
Yeah, I would just say if you could add that in, we could approve it with future amendment or whatever. I think that detail would be good. And then in the January minutes, under the officer elections, I think we should go ahead and drop in all of who the officers were, just the results of that. We named Julie, but we didn't name anybody else. So we could make amendments.
Thank you. That was my comment too about those. That was one thing I'd seen. Good catch on the amount missing under the budget, Mary. Thank you.
And with your permission, we'll reword the renaming. It wasn't that it was renamed, it's that it was moved into that unallocated budget line.
Mm-hmm. And then you'll add an amount for the increase, right? Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
And then we'll add in the actual names of the officers that were approved. Thank you, Mary. Anyone else have any comments about the minutes? Or a motion?
Make a motion to approve. Jackie Yenna.
Second, Paul Ash.
Okay, and if we can get the motion to include Mary's additions or edits.
Sure, that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, we have to do a roll, don't we?
Yeah, I'll do it.
All right.
Karen St. John,
Yes.
Jackie Yenna,
Yes.
Mary Morgan,
Yes.
Paul Ash,
Yes.
Alex Crowley,
Yes.
Kate Rosenbarger,
Yes.
and Scott Wright. Hi, Scott.
Hello, and yes.
Great.
Great. Thank you, everyone. We'll move on to reports from officers. Financial report.
Karen, could I append something it pertains to the officer discussion? We need to update our signature cards with the new appointment of officers. And Larry has suggested that if we memorialize it in this meeting, he can draft a letter that lists the officers and then the additional signers. So I was hoping I could go ahead and list that now, since we were just talking about the officers.
Actually, that would be, if you don't mind, Jane, can that be added to new business for the board?
Yes.
And be memorialized under new business, and then we can go ahead with the reports and then carry on with new
Pause.
business. Thank you very much.
And
Okay, so we'll move on to the financial report.
yeah, and I just apologize. I accidentally closed my screen that had it displaying. So let me get that open, and then I will share my screen. Sorry, guys.
That's okay.
Okay. Thanks. Are you looking at the agenda?
Yes, thank you.
And I apologize. I'll be a little sideways here for a moment, but.
Oh, no, you're fine.
Okay, so there was not a lot of activity in January, so hopefully this goes pretty smoothly. We had one additional RDC TIF, ease it in a TIF fee come in that I had spotted as, not having made it in during the regular course of business. So I got that and deposited it. We paid 3 different business scholarships out. So those scholarships were approved in the fall. So they're technically fall 2020 of the batch of kind of Recover Forward scholarships. And that's really it for expenses. Yeah, net ordinary income, it looks like, I guess I don't understand why that's negative, why we have a credit. Maybe Kevin could weigh in on that. And then total interest income.
Are you saying, Jane, that those two amounts should be equal, the RDC participation fee and the business scholarship amount?
No, they shouldn't be. I see. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I just misunderstood.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, okay. And then over to the balance sheet. Again, this negative 4,070, that's just a snapshot of that moment. We were processing a lot of payments on that day. We've drawn down the money market fund. We used a lot of that to fund the scholarships. And then a total of $1,622,088 in the First Financial Savings account. So,
yeah, and Jane, what I would say is that account, we had two checks outstanding, and it was 4,100. So we are actually positive, by like $26 or something like that.
Yeah.
So
okay, great. So just waiting for those to clear. Total cash and equivalents, 2.139 million. Total current assets, 2.139. And then we have a list of our long-term notes receivable. Nothing has changed this month. This should be exactly the same as last month. So there's nothing very exciting there. And then looking at liabilities and equity, total current liabilities, this would be outstanding payments to the RDC. I just put a check through today. And then that would be additional. Kevin, am I correct that that would also have, since we're accrual now, that would have our payables?
That's correct. We are officially on an accrual basis. So you're correct.
Okay, so that's just accurately reflecting what is going to be going out the door. Some of it
That's correct.
relating
Yes.
to 2020.
Is all of that accounts payable RDC, or is it a mix of things?
It's a mix of things.
Yeah, so
It's definitely a mix of things.
right. So I wonder if, for the benefit of the board and transparency, if we could list out under accounts payable, much like we've done under receivables, and maybe put what those are for.
Yep.
Under payable.
Yeah, absolutely, we can do that.
Okay, thank you so much. That would be great. We'll look for that for next month.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
not a problem. Not a problem.
And then sort of backing the frame up, looking at our annual budget. Again, we didn't have much activity.
Jane, could I just interrupt you for a second?
Please.
Can we
Yes.
go back and see if anyone has any questions about the financials at this point, and if there's a motion to approve? Does anyone from the board have questions about the financials? Okay, well, hearing none, is there a motion to approve and accept the financials presented here for January 31?
Move to approve.
Second.
Who was the second?
Okay,
Oh,
so
that's
we have
Scott.
a motion and a second motion from Jackie, second from Paul, to accept the financials as presented here. Jane, if you want to do a roll.
Karen St. John,
Yes?
Jackie Enna,
Yes.
Mary Morgan,
Yes.
Paul Ash,
Yes.
Alex Crowley,
Yes.
Kate Rosenbarger,
Yes.
Scott Wright.
Yes.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Sorry, I wasn't trying to speed along. I assumed we were including this in the what we approved. But anyway, this is just a snapshot of our annual budget. And we approved one new business scholarship. And that's it. And next month, I think we'll have a little more activity. We have 2 historic facade grants coming before the board, I believe, for approval. And then depending on what we approve at this meeting, we may be moving some grant budget lines around as well. So again, not a lot of activity in January, but, oh, sorry. And then Sean's arts grants, this total reflects the amount prior to the round of arts grant funding he's going to present today. So that's where we are as of right now.
Great, that's a super helpful report. Does anyone have any questions or comments on this grant commitment report that obviously reflects in the column that Jane has highlighted there, our budget, and then of that budget for the year, what we've already committed and then what we've paid, so we can keep track of that, which is really helpful. Any comments or questions about that? We don't really need to approve this. It's just your report of where you're at on that.
Okay.
Okay, so director's report. Do you have anything you want to put under there, Jane, before we go into the new business?
Yes, I had a couple items. One is that I heard from Steve Bryant from the SBDC, and as part of their annual funding package, they usually earmark $2,000 for the Cook Institute event, and he requested that they be allowed to just redeploy those funds for small business support. So I said that that would be fine, but that I would talk to the board about it. It seemed like, since it was so closely related to the other activities that the board funds, that it wouldn't be something that needed to be voted on, but that, you know, in the interest of transparency, wanted to notify the board. So I guess, Larry, I should have talked to you about that first, but yeah, so that's just an FYI that the Cook Institute luncheon is off this year because of COVID restrictions, and the 2000 will fund additional business support. The second sort of bit of news, which is really exciting, is that at our last AIEZ quarterly meeting, which is the state organization that supports enterprise zones, it was announced that there was a bill going through the House that would extend the life of enterprise zones by 5 additional years, which is super exciting. So it was approved on the House side and the Senate side, the Senate bill. 2028, pay 29. So that would be the last year that we could approve new EZIDs. And then the EZIDs will live out the course of their 10-year life. So we could potentially have funding then coming in through 2038, which is hard to believe. So that's great news.
That is great.
Do you know the numbers of those bills?
House Bill 1025, and I apologize, I don't know the Senate number, but I can email that.
Thank you.
For some reason, the group that supports AIEZ was focused on the House bill, maybe because it was farther along. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, Jane, for bringing that to our attention. That's encouraging information, and we assume you'll bring any kind of update that you get to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Thank you. Okay, anything else? Do we want to move on to zone resident scholarship disbursement schedule, or you want to just jump in and just knock out the signatories of officers on the checking accounts? We were going to put that under new business. Let's just get that done. So this is not on the agenda, but it is updating our signature cards at the banks with the different accounts we have so that they reflect the officers of the organization. Having said that, Julie Dunham is still out on medical leave and looks to return soon, but we would move forward with these without her signature, and then later when she comes back, we get in and have everything re-signed with her. So that is the current plan, if that's acceptable to everyone.
Shall I go ahead and read the list?
Sure.
Okay, so the signatories on all of our bank accounts then would be Karen St. John, Vice Chair of the BUEA, Mary Morgan, Secretary of the BUEA, Alex Crowley, Director of Economic and Sustainable Development, Kevin Curran, Deputy City Controller and Treasurer of the BUEA, and Jeff Underwood, City Controller.
And to be clear, I think we talked about yesterday, Jane, Alex, you would serve on this not as an officer, but as a board member who's on site where our records are held. So I guess it's incorrect to say that it would just be officers. It would be officers plus Alex Crowley from our board, along with Jeff and Kevin from the controller's office, Kevin being our treasurer, of course, but adding in Jeff because they're handling our books.
And
so
further clarify Alex's role, because I talked with Larry about it this morning, that it really is Alex with both hats on, because his position on the board is a result of his role as director in ESD. So those two roles are never really isolated for Alex.
Okay, gotcha. All right, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Can I also just note this? So this is not only Alex's official role as Director of Economic and Sustainable Development, it's part of the staffing agreement that you all have with the city of Bloomington to staff and hold your accounts. And it's important to note, and we should memorialize this in the minutes of the meeting, that any status of a BUEA signatory, so if Alex leaves his position, or if Kevin leaves his position, or any board ceases to become a member, their signatory authority is automatically revoked instantaneously. That kind of goes without saying to some extent, but we should make that clear in the minutes. And then it also technically authorizes anyone to sign on the opening or closing of a BUEA account. But under BUEA rules that have been established, that can only occur, an opening or closing account, with a resolution that's approved by the BUEA. So all of that should be recorded in these minutes for this meeting.
Great, good, thank you. And to note too, not only are they, if someone goes off the board, they're automatically not a signatory anymore, but we actually have to go to the bank and take their name off. It's just like that extra step.
Is this something we need to update annually then? It's an annual thing, or?
It should be updated anytime there's a change in officers, or if there is a change of position. That's good housekeeping measures, is that should happen. We include the language, the bank, we're not taking the bank process. It's more just for our own clarity that they have no signatory authority. So if you do sign something and you're no longer an employee or a member of the BUEA, we will find you liable for any malfeasance and come after you. So please don't do that.
And then it's just as a last comment and a reminder to the board, our checks are 2 signature checks. And that's true, right, Jane, for any amount of a check?
Correct.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
So no one person can sign a check. They must have 2 signatures. So given all of that, to check the box on doing this properly, from our perspective and Larry's perspective, it sounds like we need a motion to accept that list of individuals to be signators on our various bank accounts that we have. Is there someone who would like to motion such motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so a motion and it's from Jackie and a second by Paul Ash. Jane, if you'd like to call the roll.
Mm-hmm. Karen St. John,
Yes?
Jackie Yenna,
Yes.
Mary Morgan,
Yes.
Paul Ash,
Yes.
Alex Crowley,
Yes.
Kate Rosenbarger,
Yes.
and Scott Wright.
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay, great, done, thank you. So that's our one item under new business that's not listed there. We'll just move on to what is actually printed on your agenda, which is the zone resident scholarship disbursement schedule.
Jane,
Okay.
before we do that, do you mind if I just clarify something that Karen just said? I want to make sure that everybody's clear about it, which is
Please, yeah.
the checks, the physical checks are 2 signature checks. That's correct. The online bill pay check process does not currently have a 2 signature function built into it. So just to be clear to the rest of the group, the way that we are working that to overcome that challenge is any payment that would be issued from the BUEA electronically, and these days that's a fair number of them. What we do is we request approval from the controller's office to issue that payment via email, receive that approval, and then issue the payment only once we've received the approval. So we're using a kind of workaround to make sure that there's a control on that process, so no payment will be issued without a paper trail. So I just want to make sure everybody's aware.
That's correct.
And who initiates the first email request to the controller's office? Is that, who is that? Is that?
That's me.
It's
So
you.
I will issue, so electronic bill pay, so someone will ask me to request a payment. So Jane typically, or if it's a grant, an arts grant, it may come through either from Sean or Jane, and then I will package it, put it to the controller's office, receive the approval, and then trigger the payment.
Okay, so
And
we
then-
still
Yeah,
this.
and then it would go to Jeff Underwood. So I think we're copacetic.
Yeah, so we still have the same people approving those electronic payments that we just said could sign checks. So yes, I agree.
Exactly.
Thank you. Thanks, Alex and Kevin, for clarifying that.
Yes.
Okay, Jane, back to you.
Okay, we had 2 inquiries this month relating to sort of the administration of our zone resident scholarships. So the the first request or the first inquiry came from a student on his second semester of the request or of his scholarship. And even though I had communicated the reimbursement terms of the scholarship, he felt that this was burdensome and was requesting that we consider paying these scholarships up front. And this had been on my radar for a while, so I wanted to bring it to the board to ask permission for us to change the order of events, but not change the structure of the grant. So basically, the person applies for their scholarship, staff reviews the application, we send the award letter. Currently, we request the schedule after the student enrolls in the class, and then we request a transcript at the end of the semester after they complete their class, and then we process the reimbursement. I would like to recommend that we, after we approve the scholarship and send the scholarship letter, that we pay the institution after we receive verification of enrollment for that semester. So this would mean that the student would not have to find a way to come up with $750 to front for the scholarship for that semester. And then additionally, it would mean that we handle, we have one fewer step in the process. I'm not sure if that is that clear, or did I kind of approach that?
Yeah, I think that's clear. What does the board have any questions or comments about that? So moving, instead of paying someone at the end once they're done and giving them $750 to put back into their own personal account, we would just pay the institution at the very beginning so that the student never has to come up with the $750 in the first place. Is that, any questions about that? Comments, concerns?
I think that that's a great idea, because I mean the kind of general purpose of scholarships is to support kind of on the front end. This isn't like someone's working for us and getting a tuition benefit after the fact. So the way in which it's previous, it sounds like a tuition benefit from a business, like you actually work for something. And I've been a part of something like that before. And yes, that is a benefit. But, I would much rather, considering people's finances in this time, front that money rather than, and have them pay it out of pocket and then, lose and essentially not have a scholarship, right? So I support it. That's my opinion on it.
Thank you, Scott. Anyone else? Mary, it looked like you had your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm inclined to support it too. I guess I had two questions. One, is it a trivial thing for the BUEA to make a payment to an institution versus an individual? I just don't know. I assume that that's not a big deal.
Well, we only pay the institution. Currently, the student completes their course, provides their transcript, we pay the institution, and then we hope, I mean, I think it happens, but I don't see that side of the transaction, but then the institution reimburses the student.
Oh, that is a pain. I mean, that's a lot.
It's a long thread, and so that semester the student sees the reimbursement.
Oh yeah, that's bad. The other question I had was just, I could imagine that somebody would start a class with full intent to finish it, and then something happens and they don't. I don't know what would be done in that circumstance. We just eat it and say, oh well, or
I mean, I think that is an effective, they've disqualified themselves from additional BUEA programming. So I think that's our leverage. We always can seek reimbursement. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the main risk that we're exposed to. And so I think the question is whether the board is okay with that.
Yeah, that is a concern. I don't know what to do about that. I don't know if anyone else has any comments about that or other questions about a change in this process.
I'd hate to
I
see
have
us,
a comment. Oh,
I'd hate to see us get in a position where we couldn't get our money back if that would happen.
Jackie, it's not, I think you said that you'd be concerned if we couldn't get our money back. Is that what you said?
Correct. I don't think they should get off scot-free or whatever. They need to pay it back if they don't finish.
So if we could maybe put that in the agreement that if they drop out of the, I don't know how that's going to work.
Yeah.
But they would technically owe us the money. At least we can ask for it. I think, Alex, you were about to say something?
Yeah, I mean, that's, Jane and I talked about this a little bit offline, but that is absolutely the risk. My feeling on this, and I don't know what the board thinks of it, is that it would be unlikely for us to go and like aggressively pursue that money, I would think, especially in this day and age. So what I wonder is whether it makes sense for us just to kind of try it out and see what kind of, what kind of exposure we end up having. If it's minimal, then then it is. And if it's not, if it's a substantial, negative outcome, then we consider moving back to the previous approach. But I do feel like it would be a little awkward for us to go after someone, in this instance.
Yeah, I would agree.
that's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, I think it's, it doesn't work very well the way we're doing it right now. So we might as well try a new system and then evaluate that after a year or so. I mean, I think it would be highly unlikely if somebody needs money that if they do quit for some reason that they would be able to pay us back. So I am okay assuming that risk, for a year and then looking at it in 2022.
And I would say this, just, I think we give it a chance, and we'll see what happens. So I honestly believe in the decence of people. So they will pay it back if they don't, if they don't complete their program, then they will pay it back. So if they don't, then we'll figure it out.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin and Alex. It sounds like maybe then the board would support this kind of change, provided that we all agree that we'll try it for a year, let's say, or some amount of time, and then reevaluate, and that the board acknowledges there is an exposed risk there of $750 per person who drops out. It wouldn't be more than that because we wouldn't give them the second scholarship, and we're willing to accept that risk. I too would like to assume everyone will pay it back as a hope. So, but there is that saying that hope is not a strategy. So I don't know, but we at least to acknowledge for folks who are more cynical that we may not get $750 back from someone, or hopefully hardly anyone drops out. So any more comments or discussion on this? Okay, is there a motion about changing this to pay the scholarship amount upfront to the institution before the semester, or at the beginning of the semester? We would no longer require a transcript. We would still require proof of enrollment though, and then we'd send the check, but no follow-up at the end, and that we try it for a year. And if someone drops out, we would pursue $750, but to the point made by several people here, we acknowledge that may not be successful. And after a year, we'll reevaluate. It's a lot of
just-
words for what I just summarized.
I would just clarify one thing.
Uh-huh.
We'll follow up. We'll request the transcript showing the completed course, because if that individual is eligible for a second installment, we want to make sure.
Of course. Thank you. Good
Completed
catch. Of course. Right.
first
So
one.
we still would need that transcript. Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we'll still collect the transcript and verify that they completed, but the money's already out the door. That would just indicate whether or not they finished and if we'd fund them again. So any motion to make that change to the zone resident scholarship policy and process?
So moved.
Okay, that's
Second.
Scott, a motion from Scott and a second from Paul. And Jane, if you want to call the roll on that?
Yep. Karen,
Yes.
Jackie,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Alex,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
and Scott.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everyone. And Jane, if you want to move on to Dimension Mill, the scholarship program there.
So
Yep.
part 2 of residential scholarship requests. This one's a little bit farther afield, so I think I think it will be important for you guys to kind of discuss and really just consider where you want to be. I underscored the request, and then the rest of this is kind of context. So the Mill launched a code school this fall as an upskilling initiative to help underemployed, unemployed folks figure out how to become relevant in the current workforce where there's demand for qualified employees. So there were last year, Pat had a statistic that was like a million coding jobs out there for the taking. So they partnered up with Generator, an Indianapolis company, developed a 10-week program, I believe, to get people up and running for entry-level coding positions. It was, they think, really successful. We don't have final metrics on job placement, but they are tracking that, and they're working really closely with graduates to get those jobs. And there have been a few people that have established their own design firms. And so overall, it feels like a good success story, but we are still waiting on the data to come back around. So they're launching their second cohort in March. I've been communicating with the Mill a lot lately, and they are learning more about the BUEA and kind of how they can, support us, but also how they can benefit, and also get our benefits out to the community more broadly. So they would like to promote the code school to zone residents so that they would be, able to receive this upskilling opportunity. Code school tuition for the second cohort is about $2,500, and they are trying to offset the bulk of the cost, but they would like to identify or would like to connect zone residents with the zone resident scholarship to offset that expense. So they would like to request that the BUEA board consider allowing the entirety of the resident scholarship, that they consider deploying it, at once for the entirety of the code school tuition. So that's the ask.
So where we would normally give $750 per resident for a semester, they would like us to give $1,500 for a 10-week class.
Correct.
Okay, and then this also goes back to the conversation we just had, which is if they don't complete it, in this instance, what we just passed, we would pay it up front. We don't have to do that here, but we would pay it up front. And if they don't complete it, now we're at $1,500 instead of the $750.
Yeah, so I'd be happy to address any questions or add clarity if I can. And then also I'm curious to hear what you all think.
I guess I'd like to ask you up front, Jane, as executive director, do you have a recommendation here?
I feel like I have a hard time answering it because on one hand, I've really seen the success of this program, and I've talked to code school graduates who are really excited about having, you know, a new career opportunity. However, the scholarship program has existed for a long time. It's had the same format for a long time. We've already increased the funding this year, which I think is a change. We've just shifted the way we're funding it. So, you know, I also feel like we can support zone residents in participating in code school without making too much change. But that said, I'd really just like, you know, I'd like to hear what the board thinks. So I can, if you want me to have a stronger opinion, I can, but I really see both sides.
No, it's good to hear from you since you work in this all day long as opposed to just the board members who we come in once a month. So thank you for sharing that. Just to clarify, did you say that they're requesting that we allocate 2 scholarships? Did I hear that right? Or no?
No, there's a bit of matchmaking that will have to happen. So they're not requesting that we give them scholarships, but if they find zone residents who would be good candidates for this program, they would like to connect those zone residents with the BUEA scholarship.
Okay, so if they do their job really well and find 6 people at this level, we would use up our whole budget of $9,000. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Any comments from the board? Questions?
I would be kind of leery of that. I mean, we're giving a scholarship, then you got other people wanting to tell us how to run it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mary?
I guess my question is, if we did it for the mill, this program, it seems to me that any kind of shorter term training program like this, we would have to extend the same offer. And I don't know, generally are the residential scholarships used for this kind of training program, or are they more so for like a semester at Ivy Tech or?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, they used to be, we have records that go back to 2003, and I was asking myself a similar question, and it looks to me like there used to be more variety. And now I feel like we pretty much only reimburse Ivy Tech and IU courses. So I actually really like the job training aspect of this because it will contribute pretty directly to employability. And it could be, you know, people who are mid-career or whatever, not just students who are working on a traditional degree. So I do think it's interesting in that regard, but I also think we can promote the scholarship program. I mean, I think that has more to do with our marketing of it, right? If we do a broader job getting the word out about the uses of this scholarship, then I think we can probably get more diversity in the way it's applied.
I'm afraid if we did this way, it may open up a whole new can of worms on what other people expect us and try to get us to do in regard to our scholarships.
This is Alex. At the risk of twisting ourselves into a pretzel, one way to limit, I think, the concern of having a sort of wholesale shift to how we do things, and to support this and to limit the back end risk of people dropping out, could be to ask the Dimension Mill to essentially consider 2 5-week courses and bill us for both, right? So the the end result of covering that $1,500 is met, but at the 5-week mark, if the person is no longer enrolled, then the second half is not allocated, and we have not changed our rules per se to accommodate the upfront full sum. So I don't know what people think about that, but that might be a way to manage through all of these complications.
That's an interesting idea, Alex. Jane, what is the limit on a person, how much they can receive? Is it 1,500 a school year?
Lifetime.
Lifetime. Okay, so that would work for the point Alex made, which is they're done at that point. They got a scholarship. They used it for 10 weeks of the code school. Yeah.
The problem I think with that is that because the mill, I don't know if I underscored that or not. Yeah, because the mill's partnering with Ivy Tech on this round, I don't know that we have a lot of control over the way the billing is structured. And I'm pretty sure that they're conceiving of it as a single course. But I can always follow up with the mill and get more information. I believe the school is supposed to launch the second week of March. So that's why I brought this to the board now, just to get in front of it before they launch the second cohort.
I have a question for Larry. I didn't think about it until this very moment. I'm on the board of the mill, so I don't know if I should even be participating in this conversation. Larry, do you have any thought on that?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Since it's a monetary benefit to the mill, I think we could follow the city council rules. This is as it's memorialized in Bloomington Municipal Code, which is you can make the disclosure of the conflict and then disclose whether you believe that you'll be able to be impartial in this discussion. So I appreciate the disclosure. Now the question would be, are you able to participate in this and be an impartial judge for this particular thing, despite your role on the board of the Dimension Mill?
So I would answer that question, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Larry. I appreciate that.
I would also note we're at 12:48 right now. So,
yep. So any thoughts? Motion? I'm not sure we came to any consensus necessarily on this. I've heard from some folks they're not comfortable with this. A proposal from someone that we might be able to do it through billing, but Jane said that may not work. Are folks feeling like this is something we want to entertain or maybe pass and let them come under our current guidelines, which is the $750 per semester?
I would go with what we've got currently.
This is Kate. I'm sort of leaning that direction right now. I feel I'm very just conflicted. I don't know which way to go on it. I think it would be nice. I don't know a lot about this program. So Jane, do you know how many people do it? If anyone dropped out for the first round, I guess I think that would be useful for me.
Yeah, I think they had 30 graduates. I think they lost 2 students last round. So overall, I feel like that's a pretty good graduation rate. And it was very hands-on with Generator. This format is going to be a little different since it's housed at Ivy Tech. But I think they kind of realized how important hands-on support is for these students. So I'm sure the soft support will come from the mill for the second round.
Is there a motion to do this? I mean, absent a motion, we just pass on it and move on. I'm looking for anyone putting their hand up or unmuting and saying anything.
I'll make a motion that we pass on this.
So there's a motion to not act on this, which I'm not sure that we need to motion to not act now when I think about it, but we could just take a vote and say we're not going to do this. So it sounds like that's what Jackie is suggesting or motioning.
In spite of the fact that I recognize the importance of coding, even though I couldn't do it, yeah, maybe, hold off on it for this month.
Yeah, I think we've got just such a short timeline to decide on this. I think needs more discussion.
So just for the clarity of procedure, if you would like to hold on this for more discussion, that would be best stated as a motion to reconsider at a specific time. So a motion to reconsider at the next meeting. If you'd like to just not consider it, obviously there could be no motion passed at all and the board stay silent. If you would like to specifically have a motion to decline this, then I believe that may be the motion that's on the table currently to be discussed, and to see if there's a second to that particular motion. Then that's a third route. I'm sorry to be confusing, but those would be the procedural avenues for accomplishing these various tasks.
Yeah, thank you, Larry. So Jackie, you made a motion to pass on this. Were you making a motion to not address this, or are you saying I'd like to make a motion that we don't do this?
I think we need to take some more time and reconsider it.
So you're making a motion to hold on and reconsider this later?
Correct.
Okay.
Second.
And there's a second from Mary. So there's a motion to not take any action now and reconsider this later. So it would appear on a later agenda at some time frame.
Okay. I'll call the roll. Karen St. John.
Yes.
Jackie Enna.
Yes.
Mary Morgan.
Yes.
Paul Ash.
Yes.
Alex Crowley.
Yes.
Kate Rosenbarger.
Yes.
And Scott Wright.
Yes.
Okay, thanks for that conversation. I apologize for not coming in with a stronger opinion for you, but I wanted you all to guide that. So thank you. And then Karen, not to backseat drive, but since we're so short on time, I'm wondering, because Sean has grants to be funded, if we should have him talk to us about the current round of arts grants.
Yeah, he's actually next on the agenda after this dimension mill, right?
Isn't the anti-racism?
No, that's even
under,
later.
okay.
So what we
Okay,
might
great.
have to do, given the time, I agree with you. We may just have to do these arts grants and then see how the board is feeling prior to a marketing update and the anti-racism. And if folks can't stay at the meeting, we'll have to move those, take a vote to move those off the agenda and move on.
I think that's
that work. Okay. So Sean, we're with you. It's 12:54. I'm not telling you to rush, but if we have to vote, we can't lose. Does anyone need to leave right at 1?
I have to leave at 1:15.
1:15. Anyone else that needs to leave prior to 1:15? Okay, so Sean, if you can, again, not to rush you, but also I'd suggest you don't go right up to 1:15 because,
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I'll keep it brief and
Okay.
just so the board knows, we closed out this round with the applicants that you see, and I don't know, Jane, I don't know if you could share the report that I have, or I could bring it up. It's whatever.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can do it.
So Scott represented the BUEA. We had members of the BAC. I'm happy to report that we had 8 new first-time applicants, 2 that qualified for the venue fund, and then 3 artists or like organizations of color. So that's like a really important thing for us to, as we've been thinking about from both the BUEA side and the BAC side, making sure that we're supporting Black and people of color based organizations. And we have 3 in this round. And then also another kind of subset of interest is LGBTQ focused or those kinds of programming projects. So this round was specifically for programming for this year. So that's why the funding mechanisms or some of the funding is a little bit lower, is because it's for program based. So some of these folks have skin in the game, some are establishing new partnerships. All this is also based off of COVID timelines. So some of this stuff is online, some of these programs are in person, limited, right? Those kinds of things, trying to do it safe based off of what the health department is saying they're allowed to do. But this time I included in the snapshot the discipline that's being represented and kind of just an overall kind of project description, just to give you guys or you all more things to focus on in terms of what the programs are going to be. But overall, the committee was pretty excited that everybody scored fairly well. As staff, I'm pretty excited about this kind of the level and depth of diversity represented. We're still trying to get at the core of what people are trying to educate people on what actual diversity means, not just artistic diversity. So the BAC is going to be focusing on that in their grant cycle in April. And I'll just like kind of leave it at that if that's okay, and then answer any questions that you all may have as a board.
Thank you, Sean. Any comments or questions from the board?
Since we have newer board members, although I guess we've done a few rounds of arts grants, do you mind just briefly summarizing the review protocol? Yeah. So, I mean, obviously we've kind of shifted this just to be safer online process and actually streamlined the process a bit. So what we do is we have like an odd number of reviewers. Usually it's people from the Bloomington Arts Commission, a member or two from the BUEA. This for the member of the public, we had Erin Erdman-White from Visit Bloomington. We felt it was important to kind of establish, we work with Visit Bloomington quite frequently. Erin also manages their marketing grant program, so she has her own kind of subset of skills that she reviews within applications. And then we also had we usually reach out to IU's O'Neill School for to give graduate students experience on the grant side of things. So essentially what happens is people submit their scores based off of a rubric that we provide. And then it kind of sets a bell curve, and then we kind of go from that bell curve across the scores and kind of set what limits we have in terms of funding. So we said we had around 40,000 to distribute, and then it gets redistributed based off of staff does a really good job of reviewing the actual budget. So what organizations have skin in the game, have established partnerships, which ones might not have as much. So what happens in grants with programming especially is the grant will trigger the program. Sometimes people like Cardinal Stage is doing radio plays and it's a pretty airtight and it always scores well. And what we try to do so that reviewers don't have bias is make sure that they understand that some projects might be in the early stages of development, and having a little bit of funding actually kickstarts the whole thing, and then it snowballs. So, did that explain it? Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks,
Sorry, I'm
Sean.
also trying to be really brief.
Yeah. I have a question, just two questions.
Yep.
One is about the total of 42.6 and our budget of, I think 40,000, unless you're including some of the, so our budget that we passed was 40,000 for zone arts grants and 30,000 for the city art program.
So this is actually RF. This is part of the last year's RF funding that was passed.
Okay.
Yeah. So we actually have 65, and that number isn't super accurate. It's more like 62 because the last round of applicants are IU, and they're going through their process, and it's taking them a long time to get proper signatures and EFT.
Sorry, yeah, I see that now. So this is on the budget. It's under the rapid response grant making at the bottom,
Yes,
of which our budget is $65,025, and this clearly 46,000 or whatever it was, 42.6. 42.6 clearly fits within that, which would leave us
22
roughly.
And the reason why we're hanging on to that, just to be clear with the board, is I know venues has been a big concern. Staff is really concerned about Save Our Stages, which is the act that was passed part of the federal stimulus. I don't know if anybody's been following that, but the New York Times wrote a really kind of scary report that money is going to be similar to what the first wave of PPP was like, going to larger venues like football stadiums and entertainment industry folks like that, rather than actual on the ground venues. So we're trying to keep a little bit just in the coffers, just to make sure we know what's going to shake out and that nobody on the local level will be left out, similar to what we've done with RF and the loan program. So that's why we're kind of hanging on to a little bit of a buffer there within the grant program rather than just distributing it all out in this pocket.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Any other questions from the board, comments, motion to approve?
I think Morgan, Mary.
Yeah. Sean, can you remind us what kind of reporting back, if any, happens? So
that's a great question. So they have to provide documentation of all their programs, attendees. We're not like a state or a federal agency, so that it's not like based on ethnicity or anything like that. We try to ask for documentation. They have to use BUEA marketing, the logo, and all marketing for the program, for the project. We're also tracking whether they are, who they're hiring staff-wise, or if they're letting staff go because of COVID concerns. So there's a lot of COVID we're tracking in this kind of cycle as well. And then, online documentation of marketing promotion materials, and then kind of a report on who attended, how successful it was, what are, if you were to do this program again, what would you need to make it even more successful, that kind of stuff. So we usually get a final report, and we usually ask for that 60 days after the project has been complete.
Great, thanks. And then I would just say, in light of the social media efforts that are being done, it would be great to see us use social media to promote these grant recipients and their work. Thanks.
And I'd add on to that too. So Sean, you're confirming that our logo will appear. So when Bloom Magazine does their Celebrating Black Women of Bloomington feature of 20 to 23 women, that our logo would then go into Bloom Magazine.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah, at some level, right? Either on their website, in print, right? They will have access to all that. Rachel, the media specialist we made a really nice clear-cut package about different formats to use. So I'll make sure, and that's in the MOU. That's a reporting requirement. And then Mary, and some of the conversation that came up, I think this is important to also clarify, just with the zone scholarships and what you all were talking about. If we don't get a final report, they're ineligible for future funding. So, if people don't do what they follow through on, or if they don't communicate with us, they're ineligible. So, the MOU is a pretty airtight thing, and people do follow through. So.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Okay, Sean, thanks for that presentation. Is there a motion to approve this?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so a motion by Paul Ash to approve this $42,600 for the RF. We call it, on our budget, it's called Rapid Response Grant Making, that would come out of our emergency art grant allocation of $42,600. Jane, do you want to take a role in that?
Yep. Karen St. John?
Yes.
Jackie Yenna?
Yes.
Mary Morgan?
Yes.
Paul Ash?
Yes.
Alex Crowley?
Yes.
Kate Rosenbarger?
Yes.
Scott Wright?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Sean. Appreciate your time there and being sensitive to where we are. So it's 1:04. We have Brittany with us. I'd like to be able to let her make her presentation around marketing and social media. And then after that, we'll see where we are on time. I think it's possible that anti-racism, diversity, education, scholarship conversation may take longer than 5 minutes, which would run over and people would have to leave. So we'll wait till Brittany's done and see how the board feels about moving that or keeping it today. Okay, Brittany, you're on.
Thank you so much, Karen. I'll try to move quickly, but thank you all for allocating time for me to speak today. I do first want to say that I've really enjoyed being able to be a part of the BUEA mission, and I've loved the insight I've gained from these meetings. So thank you so much for that.
Brittany's been supporting us behind the scenes since the beginning of last semester, but she had a scheduling conflict. So that's why you haven't been able to see her and get to know her as well, but she's been doing a lot for us. So thanks, Brittany.
Thank you, Jane. Yeah, hopefully you'll be seeing my face a lot more often. But I've recently been working with Jane on strategic communications plans and building the BUA social media presence and outreach. Because past social media plans were set aside due to respect of the recent environment, we are in ways starting from scratch on social media. And by that, I just mean we don't have a strong following quite yet. But luckily, we can use previous communication plans set in place by Rachel, who Sean was speaking of earlier, as long as we stay cognizant and respectful of the environment. So as you all know, businesses need our support now more than ever, which makes spreading our mission and maintaining outreach extremely important, but it does have to start internally within the organization. So in order for posts to reach people, they require interaction from the board. Otherwise, it's sort of like screaming into an empty void a little bit. But the good news is, at least for Facebook, in the last 28 days, we have acquired 160 new page likes. So thank you, Jane, for sending out requests. And then also thank you, Mary Morgan. I know you've been interacting and have been really active on social media lately. So just kind of the lowdown, each week we'll keep with a theme. So last week, if you look on our pages, we had a resident focus where we highlighted the zone in general, and then also the economic independence scholarship. This week, we will have a business focus. So we will be highlighting the BEES scholarship, or Business Economic Enhancement Scholarship. I actually later today will be doing a spotlight on Kurt Cummings and Switchyard Brewery. I decided to start out with him because it seems that Switchyard has a very strong presence on social media. So I thought that would be beneficial for us to be involved with that and get outreach from him as well. So I'll be posting that around 2 p.m. today. So if you want to keep an eye out. And then later this week on Friday, I will be doing a post on the FAC Aid grant. So in reference to the document that Jane has pulled up, these are just some kind of steps that will help get the BUEA social media kind of off the ground. Starting social media campaigns can be very tedious and seem somewhat slow, so it's just going to take some time and patience and consistency. But first and foremost, make sure you follow all of our sites, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. They are all at Bloomington UEA, and I think they're all listed on there as well. But I do want to emphasize that if you do not have one of these social media platforms, don't feel pressure to create an account. You absolutely do not have to do that. You can just interact with our posts on the pages that you do have. And then along with amping our mission through social media, I will be continuing to work on other sources of outreach, including promoting interaction on social media with our grantees like Switchyard Brewery and our other zone businesses. And then later we will be working on a flyer postcard campaign for our zone resident scholarships. But yeah, on that document, if you follow, it's separated by each social media platform. It will give some steps on how you can emphasize outreach. So like I said earlier, Jane, on our page, there is an option where you can share and invite friends and family to like the Facebook page. So Jane, I know you did that. And then along with that, I think another important thing to note on that list is on Facebook, you can set up notifications for our posts. And this is really convenient. So then whenever the BUEA posts, you'll get a notification to your phone. And then right away, you can go like, share, comment, however you want to interact. But maintaining a consistent interaction from our board is extremely important in this process. Any questions?
Thanks, Brittany. Really appreciate it. That's super helpful. If anyone has trouble, can they reach out to you via directly or Jane via email, maybe get some help from you there? Great.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? It's really great to have this with people reading local news media to the extent that that ebbs and flows and moves into different markets and maybe isn't the traditional kind of media, news media that people think about all the time now like they used to. Social media is a great outlet to promote the BUEA. So thank you for all your work on that. Comments from the board? Questions?
I would just reiterate this is great job. And then a question, how long are you going to be with the BUEA? And what is the plan for who gets, is that Jane, you're going to get to handle the social media after Brittany?
Well, we're lucky because Brittany is an O'Neill Fellow. We have her the remainder of this year and then all of next school year. She will be teaching at sailing camp on Lake Monroe this summer. So she's going to be busy over the summer doing something more fun, but we get her back in the fall. So there will be, I think we'll benefit from some consistency before she hands it back over.
Yeah, I think also too, if I'm correct, after my fellowship is over, I think you will have the option to apply for another fellow, won't you, Jane?
Absolutely, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so I will be able to, create transition documents that will help out with that transition onto the next fellow.
Great, thank you, Brittany.
Of course.
Any other comments from the board? Okay, well, thank you. That's very helpful. I would encourage all of you to, again, if you are on social media, to really help us out and invite your contacts, friends, connections to like the BUEA social media pages. And I think Brittany's strategy is a good one. I'll just say, going after places that have like the Switchyard that have a really big following, it's a huge way to ramp up your social media presence really quickly. So great for that. Okay, thank you so much. So it's 1:12. I don't, so the diversity, the last item is the Anti-Racism, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Scholarship. I certainly don't want to not get to that, but on the other hand, 3 minutes is not adequate to do what we want to do there, which, if you recall at the last meeting, we requested that Jane come back with a proposal to put more into that. So, and Scott has asked if anyone else can stay on. So Mary, you need to leave at 1:15. Anyone else? And will we have quorum? And it could take 15 minutes, so it could be a while longer. The other thing is and this is no recommendation, I'm just giving options to the board. We decide to table that until the March meeting.
If others can stay on and there's a quorum, I mean, I'm perfectly comfortable with whatever the board decides. And I'm sorry I can't take part in the discussion, but.
Okay. I think we would have quorum if everyone else is staying on, but maybe not. Is anyone else leaving? Or I'm asking that a bunch of different ways that are not helpful. Is there anyone else that needs to leave right now at 1:15? Or wants to? It doesn't have to be a need to, you just can't stay. Okay, I think everyone is staying. And Alex is laughing at me, so that's fine. I can see you laughing even though they're muted. Okay, so well, then great. That's awesome. I want to thank everyone ahead of time for putting in extra time because this is very important. So thank you very much. And Jane, go for it.
Sure. I'll start screen sharing again, which I keep jumping on and off. Sorry about that. So I sort of re-summarized the memo I wrote last month, or not re-summarized, but rather I summarized it. And then after having spoken with Community and Family Resources Department and with Karen, kind of shifted around some of the ways in which I was thinking about this program and wound up trying to maximize impact with as many organizations as possible while allocating a moderate amount of funding because this is a pilot program. And it's pilot not because we won't be committed to this topic in 2022, but because we're funding it for the first time and it may take a year for us to understand how to meet organizational needs in the best, most effective way. So with that said, I recommended increasing the amount to $15,000 with a limit of $500 per organization with 5 employees or more. This is just to say, if it's a 1-person, 2-person enterprise, then we'll give them $100 a person rather than the 500. We would pay up front to trainers or whatever the provider is in order to remove that barrier of cost or mitigate the barrier of cost. And then we'll try to support organizations who haven't really dipped their toe into this subject matter yet. So we'll have a screening question on the application that asks whether an organization has participated in any other training. So, and then number 5, I left that escalator clause in here, which allows an increase in funding at 25% if organizations collaborate on the training. So this is just kind of a monetary way to support more training and facilitate public discourse about these issues as a way to kind of shine a light on it and make sure that as many people as we can help are talking about this stuff. So I would highlight this as a starting point for funding this type of scholarship or granting program. And yeah, I don't know, I'm happy to take questions and feedback.
Thanks, Jane. And just to add in, so what we had last time was we had unspecified grants of 5,000. Jane had listed that as, I'm not sure actually if you had listed that, but we had had it in the unspecified grant because we weren't sure what we wanted to do with that. So we called it unspecified, left 5,000. You brought back a proposal last time and the board felt like they wanted it to be more, even though we'd passed the budget, and that we were willing to go over the 5,000 that we had allocated. So your proposal here would be 15,000. So we would go over that unspecified budget line by 10,000. And I'm not saying that is a statement one way or the other, but just awareness for the board. And we can absolutely vote to do that. So just to tie that into our budget spending. Any comments or questions for Jane? Sorry, Jane.
Can I add one more bit of context? Kate had raised an issue at the end of last meeting about kind of making sure the quality of the training that organizations go through. And I had kind of said, well, we really want to facilitate organizations in doing their own self-assessments and setting their own course and working on this subject matter. So after talking to Shatoya Moss, the Safe and Civil Cities Director, she felt also positive about letting businesses choose their own strategy, but that she was concerned there may be people who don't have the expertise to even know where to start looking. And so she will partner with us to make a few recommendations on viable options for people at different price points. Yeah, so happy to take questions.
Are there questions or comments from the board?
I definitely feel that these issues need to be addressed. Racism has reared its ugly head again. And yeah, I'm very comfortable with spending this amount of money to address the issue.
Thanks, Paul. Anyone else like to share a comment or a question? No, okay.
This is Kate. I'll comment. I think this is good. I think DEI scholarships, of course, for folks who can't afford this kind of thing on their own is really great. I mean, as Jane kind of pointed out, I'm interested in general in like the community as a whole, with the city leading it, like developing over time a common framework. So like, I understand like this is not for that purpose, but I would love to like delve into that maybe in the future, because I know other cities are doing it, and I've talked to a couple in Utah is doing really awesome things with their government and businesses and community foundation about developing a common language to talk about this stuff in the city. So I don't know. I know this is business oriented, but then I'm also just like interested in hearing what you all think about that maybe at a later date.
Yeah, I would just point out, Kate, that I think we're in the beginning stages of something like that. Beverly Calendar Anderson and Caroline Shaw are working on programming for city staff, and I think that will, with their strategic planning, I think that will reverberate out into the community. And then we've got a small budget line as part of the ESD budget that will be more prescriptive. It'll be a more specific kind of mirror to this program, I think, and aimed again specifically at small businesses. So I feel like this is a component to laying those foundational blocks, but I hear what you're saying. It's definitely not comprehensive. It's not in any way comprehensive. It's just a small starting point.
Yeah, thanks. I agree with you. I mean, I think this is necessary. And yeah, I know we're looking at like department heads and elected officials for like kind of first iteration at the city level. And I'm excited about that. Like I know some really cool organizations applied. Sorry, I just said cool. Some really qualified organizations applied to lead us down that path. And I think this is a great starting point and just one component. Everything you said, I agree with totally.
Thank you, Kate. I would add, when Jane and I were talking about this yesterday, as much as it would be nice to do larger scholarships, the nice thing about 500 on this first rollout of a pilot program is that it allows us to touch 30 different businesses. And the thought is that it reaches out more. So that would amplify out, and we'd have more businesses hopefully participating in a program who are talking to other colleagues in their network about this kind of training. And it might actually grow the whole idea of training, because probably there are some businesses who are like our business, where we know we want to do this training and they're trying to figure out how to do it. Some businesses, it's really unfortunately not on their radar. So we're hoping that by reaching more organizations, so this would be 30 organizations at $500, that would help amplify what needs to be done here. So I would just add that in. Any other comments from the board or questions? Or
I have a clarifying question maybe for Jane. If you look at the language of the top paragraph, you're specifying zone residents, but you're not specifying zone businesses or nonprofits. So just to make sure, are we going to be limiting this to businesses within the zone? The BUEA has a kind of broader mandate of both within the zone and also benefiting the zone. So I guess I just want to make sure that we're all clear about that.
I wonder if you're looking at the other, I guess you're looking at my screen share. I see supportive small businesses, nonprofits, zone residents, and then I see program that will allow small businesses and nonprofits to apply for funding.
So are those, if I'm a small business, do I have to reside in the zone?
To receive this, yes.
Yeah, okay.
So I should clarify that it's zone businesses. Sorry, I misunderstood what you were saying.
Well, but I mean, there's so the BUEA has that sort of catch-all that says either, in the zone or benefiting the zone, right? So I think we could probably go either way. I was just curious about the intention.
Right. I mean, personally, I would handle that the way we always handle it, which is with a lot of context when it's a business that doesn't have a physical address in the zone.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anyone else with a question or a comment? Okay, or is there a motion one way or the other? Do people feel supportive of this?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Paul for approval of this program as presented, and a second by Jackie. Any more discussion? Okay, Jane, if you want to call the roll on that.
Sure. Karen St. John.
Yes.
Jackie Enna.
Yes.
Mary's gone. Paul Ash,
Yes.
Alex Crowley,
Yes.
Kate Rosenbarger,
Yes.
and Scott Wright.
Yes.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate the commitment from the board to stay on so we could get this done. Thank you to Brittany and Sean and Larry and Kevin for being here to support us as staff. Jane, thank you for getting us through a very packed February agenda. Very much appreciate that, knowing that we are trying some new systems here and changing some things up, enhancing our processes. So really, really appreciate that. And thank you just to the board for sticking around and getting us through the whole agenda so that we can start anew in March. So unless there's any further business or comments from the board.
Move to adjourn.
Okay, we're not going to vote on that. We'll just adjourn if people are ready to adjourn. Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you everyone for being here, and we will see you in March.
And Jackie, thank you. You kept us moving along today. So well done.
No problem.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks, everybody.